The message came on a Tuesday morning when most of Earth was still sleeping. Every communication device on the planet received it at exactly the same moment. Radios crackled to life in empty rooms, television screens lit up without anyone turning them on, and cell phones buzzed in pockets across 7 continents. The transmission bypassed every security system humanity had ever built. General Marcus Kane was drinking his morning coffee in the Pentagon when his aide, Lieutenant Roy Baker, rushed into his office. The young officer looked pale, and his hands shook as he handed Kane the decoded message. Kane read it twice before the words truly sank in. The Zephyrian hegemony had given Earth 72 hours to surrender completely. The alien message was simple and direct. Humanity had become too dangerous for galactic peace. Their wars, their weapons, their aggressive nature made them a threat to civilized species everywhere. Earth's people would be relocated to designated colony worlds where they could live under proper supervision. Any resistance would result in the complete destruction of human civilization. Kane immediately called President Helen Martinez. Within an hour, every world leader was connected through secure channels. The president's voice remained steady as she spoke to the emergency council. She had been briefing with Dr. Lisa Morgan, Earth's top scientist who studied alien life. Morgan had been tracking strange signals from deep space for months, but never imagined they came from hostile forces. The aliens proved their power by shutting down every satellite in orbit for exactly 60 seconds. The entire global communication network went dark. Internet connections died, GPS systems failed, and weather monitoring stopped working. Then everything came back online as if nothing had happened. It was a demonstration that Earth's technology meant nothing to them. Commander Jake Sullivan ran the space defense program from his base in Colorado. His screens showed empty space where human ships patrolled the outer system. The fleet Earth had built over 30 years looked impressive. To human eyes, but would be useless against enemies who could cross the galaxy in days. Sullivan knew they were facing an enemy far beyond anything humans had ever encountered. In cities around the world, people gathered around televisions and radios. The news reporters struggled to explain what was happening. Some called it a hoax, until the satellite blackout proved the aliens were real. Fear spread quickly through major population centers. Stock markets crashed within hours as investors realized money would mean nothing if humanity lost its freedom. But something else was happening in smaller towns and rural areas. People were not panicking the way experts predicted. Instead, they were getting angry. Factory workers in Detroit started talking about making weapons. Farmers in Kansas began organizing neighborhood watches. Veterans from old wars cleaned their rifles and called their friends. The alien ultimatum had awakened something deep in the human spirit that refused to accept defeat. Dr. Morgan worked frantically to understand the alien technology. The quantum transmission had bypassed every security system, but left traces she could analyze. The signals came from 12 different sources, suggesting an alliance of multiple species. Their technology was centuries ahead of Earth's, but followed patterns she could begin to recognize. President Martinez addressed the world 18 hours after the ultimatum arrived. She stood at the podium in the White House press room looking directly into the cameras. Her words were simple and clear. Earth would not surrender. Humanity would not abandon their home to become prisoners on alien worlds. If the Zephyrians wanted Earth, they would have to take it by force. The president's speech was broadcast on every available channel. She spoke about the choice facing humanity and what surrender would mean for future generations. Children would grow up as slaves under alien rule. Human culture, human dreams, and human freedom would disappear forever. She said some things were worth fighting for even when victory seemed impossible. General Kane coordinated with military leaders worldwide. Earth's defenses were spread thin across multiple continents. The human fleet was small and outdated compared to alien technology. Ground forces would be vulnerable to attacks from space, but Kane had learned important lessons from studying human history. Superior technology did not always guarantee victory when facing determined defenders. As the deadline approached, strange reports came from intelligence agencies. Rural areas were not evacuating as expected. Instead, people were digging in and preparing to fight. Hardware stores sold out of ammunition and supplies. Construction workers built underground shelters. Even teenagers were learning to use weapons and radios. Dr. Morgan made an important discovery in the alien communications. The Zephyrians had been monitoring Earth for decades, but their analysis was flawed. They understood human weapons and military tactics, but completely misunderstood human psychology. The aliens expected rational beings who would surrender when faced with superior force. They had never encountered a species that would choose death over slavery. Commander Sullivan received orders to prepare the human fleet for battle. He knew his ships would be destroyed quickly, but maybe they could buy time for ground forces to organize. His pilots were volunteers who understood they were flying suicide missions. Each one signed up anyway because they believed some fights were worth losing if it meant refusing to surrender. The final hours before the deadline saw humanity divided between those who wanted to surrender and those who chose to fight. But as the moment approached, something remarkable happened. The voices calling for surrender grew quieter while more people joined the resistance. Factory workers volunteered to make weapons, doctors organized field hospitals, and teachers began training children to survive in hiding. When the 72 hours expired, President Martinez sent one final message to the Zephyrian hegemony. Earth's answer was simple. Humanity rejected their ultimatum completely. If the aliens wanted to destroy human civilization, they were welcome to try. But they should understand that humans had survived ice ages, plagues, and world wars. They would not go quietly into slavery no matter what technology the enemy possessed. The stage was set for a war that would test whether human determination could overcome alien superiority. The ships appeared without warning exactly 72 hours after the ultimatum expired. They materialized in Earth's orbit like ghosts becoming solid, their hulls stretching for miles against the black of space. Admiral Kextar stood on the bridge of his flagship watching Earth turn slowly below. The blue and white planet looked peaceful from this distance, but he knew it contained the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever encountered. Captain Ryan Torres commanded the UDS Resolute as it led humanity's desperate charge toward the alien fleet. His ship was Earth's newest and strongest warship, but it looked like a toy compared to the massive vessels surrounding the planet. Torres knew he was leading his crew to certain death, but someone had to fire the first shot. Someone had to show the aliens that humans would fight back. The battle lasted less than 10 minutes. Human missiles exploded harmlessly against alien shields while plasma beams cut through Earth ships like paper. Torres watched his fleet disappear one vessel at a time until only the Resolute remained. His engines were failing, and half his crew was dead, but he made one final decision. He aimed his dying ship at the nearest alien cruiser and pushed the engines beyond their limits. The explosion lit up the sky over North America as the Resolute crashed into the Zephyrian vessel. Both ships died in a ball of fire that could be seen from the ground. Torres and his crew were gone, but they had drawn first blood. They proved that humans would rather die fighting than live in surrender. Commander Velnox watched the primitive human ship destroy his cruiser and felt something he had never experienced before. These creatures were willing to die just to hurt their enemies. His tactical computer showed no logical reason for such behavior. The hegemony had offered them life under supervision, but humans chose death instead. On the surface, people watched their defenders die in streaks of light across the sky. The alien demonstration was complete. Earth's military was destroyed, and the planet lay defenseless before superior technology. The Zephyrians expected surrender broadcasts to begin within hours as human leaders accepted reality. Instead, Velnox received new orders from Admiral Kextar. The humans needed a stronger lesson about the price of resistance. Velnox selected Chicago as his target because it represented human industry and determination. He would destroy the city quickly and cleanly to minimize casualties while demonstrating alien power. The bombardment began at noon local time when most people were at work or school. Plasma beams fell from the sky like burning rain, turning skyscrapers into dust and vaporizing entire city blocks. 50,000 people died in the first 15 minutes. Children in classrooms, families eating lunch, office workers at their desks all gone in an instant. Dr. Morgan watched the destruction from her hidden laboratory in Colorado. Her equipment intercepted alien communications as Velnox reported the successful demonstration to his superiors. She realized the massacre was not planned by the hegemony leadership. One commander had acted on his own to accelerate human surrender, but the effect was exactly opposite of what Velnox intended. Images of burning Chicago spread across the globe before communication networks were cut. Instead of breaking human will, the attack ignited something primal and dangerous. The aliens had just proven they would murder children to make their point. General Kane coordinated surviving military units from mobile command posts that moved constantly to avoid detection. His forces were scattered and poorly equipped, but they represented something the aliens had never faced before. Every soldier knew their families might be next if they failed to fight back. The first Zephyrian ground troops landed in major cities expecting token resistance before formal surrender. They found empty streets and abandoned buildings. The humans had vanished into underground tunnels, subway systems, and hidden shelters. What should have been a simple occupation became a nightmare of ambushes and traps. Private Amy Rodriguez led a squad of survivors through the ruins of Los Angeles. Her team included a teenage mechanic named Kevin Martinez and an elderly veteran called Frank Williams. They had salvaged weapons from destroyed military bases and learned to strike quickly before disappearing. The aliens never knew when or where humans would attack next. In the countryside, rancher Pete Johnson organized farmers across 3 states into a resistance network. They knew every road, every hill, and every hiding place for hundreds of miles. When alien patrols tried to secure rural areas, they found themselves surrounded by enemies who melted away like shadows whenever reinforcements arrived. The Zephyrians discovered that human weapons were primitive but effective at close range. Their advanced armor protected against energy weapons, but could not stop high-powered rifle bullets. More importantly, humans seemed willing to die just to kill one alien soldier. Every landing zone became a death trap. Commander Velnox reported increasing casualties to Admiral Kextar with growing concern. The humans were not fighting like any species in hegemony databases. They used tactics that made no logical sense, sacrificing their own lives to kill individual enemies. Worse, their resistance was growing stronger instead of weaker. Underground networks emerged in every occupied city. Teacher Catherine Baker organized children to gather intelligence on alien movements. Dr. Stephen Clark treated wounded fighters in hidden medical facilities. Corporate executive Linda Green used her business connections to smuggle supplies to resistance cells. The aliens tried harsh countermeasures including public executions and the destruction of famous landmarks. When they demolished the Statue of Liberty, recruitment for resistance groups tripled overnight. When they shot captured fighters, human attacks became more vicious and personal. Every alien cruelty backfired by strengthening human determination. Admiral Kextar reviewed casualty reports with growing unease. His initial assessment called for a 3-week pacification campaign, but human resistance showed no signs of weakening. The Hegemony Council was asking difficult questions about why primitive barbarians continued to defy superior technology. Dr. Morgan made crucial discoveries analyzing alien equipment recovered from crash sites. The Zephyrians relied heavily on automated systems and networked communications. When humans disrupted their technology, alien units became confused and ineffective. She began developing ways to turn their own superiority against them. 6 months into the occupation, the Zephyrians controlled major cities but nothing else. Human resistance fighters moved freely through rural areas and struck urban targets whenever they chose. The aliens had won every battle, but somehow they were losing the war. Commander Jake Sullivan emerged from deep cover with a new plan. While the aliens focused on surface resistance, he had been preparing something they would never expect. If the Zephyrians wanted to conquer Earth, they would learn the true cost of fighting humanity on their home ground. 3 months into the occupation, Admiral Kextar stood in the war room of his flagship staring at casualty reports that defied all military logic. The Zephyrian hegemony was losing ground troops at a rate that threatened the entire campaign. Despite overwhelming technological superiority, His forces were being systematically destroyed by enemies who should have surrendered months ago. Lieutenant Colonel Amy Rodriguez crouched in the ruins of what used to be downtown Los Angeles, studying alien patrol patterns through cracked concrete and twisted steel. Her resistance cell had grown from 12 survivors to over 200 fighters drawn from every walk of life. Kevin Martinez had become her best scout despite being only 17 years old. Frank Williams trained new recruits using lessons learned in 3 different human wars. The resistance had evolved far beyond anything the aliens expected. They no longer fought like soldiers trying to win battles. Instead, they fought like humans protecting their home, using every advantage their planet provided. Underground tunnels connected safe houses across entire cities. Hidden weapons caches supplied fighters who struck without warning, then vanished into crowds of seemingly innocent civilians. Dr. Morgan worked in a laboratory built inside an abandoned subway station, surrounded by salvaged alien technology and human ingenuity. She had reverse-engineered Zephyrian plasma weapons and learned to modify their power cells. More importantly, she discovered critical weaknesses in their combat systems. The aliens relied too heavily on their technology and had little experience adapting when their equipment failed. In rural Montana, rancher Pete Johnson commanded a network that stretched across 5 states. His people knew every mountain trail, every hidden valley, and every cave system in the region. When alien forces tried to secure strategic locations, they found themselves facing enemies who could appear anywhere and disappear just as quickly. Johnson's fighters had captured enough alien weapons to arm 3 battalions. The Zephyrians implemented increasingly desperate measures to break human resistance. Commander Velnox argued for orbital bombardment of entire regions, but Admiral Kexter faced political pressure from the Hegemony Council. Other member species were growing nervous about the prolonged campaign and questioned whether extermination might be the only solution to the human problem. Each alien atrocity backfired by strengthening human determination. When they destroyed the Golden Gate Bridge, resistance recruitment doubled in California. When they executed captured mayors and governors, entire cities rose in rebellion. The aliens learned too late that humans became more dangerous when they had nothing left to lose. Major Elena Vasquez led the liberation of Denver using tactics that would have been impossible for any other species. Her team included accountant Mike Thompson, college student Ashley Young, and mechanic Carlos Rivera, all trained in urban warfare by veterans of the initial invasion. They captured an alien transport by pretending to be prisoners and used it to infiltrate the occupying garrison. The attack on Denver proved that humans could think like hunters instead of soldiers when necessary. Vasquez's fighters moved through the city like wolves, striking supply lines and communication centers while avoiding direct confrontation with superior alien technology. Within 48 hours, the Zephyrian occupation force was trapped and surrounded by enemies they could not locate or predict. Dr. Morgan made her most important discovery while analyzing genetic samples taken from alien casualties. The Zephyrians and their hegemony allies were all evolved from prey species that survived through cooperation and technological advancement. They had never encountered predators who became intelligent while keeping their aggressive instincts intact. Underground networks expanded to include every level of human society. Teachers like Catherine Baker organized intelligence gathering among children who could move through alien checkpoints without suspicion. Doctors like Stephen Clark maintained hidden medical facilities in subway tunnels and abandoned buildings. Even corporate infrastructure became part of the resistance as business leaders coordinated supply chains for the war effort. Commander Jake Sullivan operated from a mobile command center that moved constantly through the Rocky Mountains. His intelligence teams had identified a crucial weakness in Zephyrian society through intercepted communications. The hegemony species had been at peace for over 800 years, and their military doctrine assumed rational opponents who surrendered when victory became impossible. Captain Nina Foster's reconnaissance unit discovered abandoned alien research facilities containing disturbing intelligence about human warfare. The Zephyrians had been studying Earth's conflicts for decades, but their analysis was fundamentally flawed. They cataloged human weapons and tactics without understanding the psychology that drove human soldiers to fight beyond all rational limits. The alien files revealed the true reason for their invasion. Humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic civilization. Every other intelligent species had achieved space travel through peaceful cooperation and scientific advancement. Only humans had reached the stars while maintaining the warrior instincts that ensured their survival on a hostile planet. Admiral Kextar received increasingly urgent messages from hegemony leadership. The war was lasting far longer than anyone predicted, and costs were mounting beyond acceptable limits. Other member worlds questioned whether the human threat was worth the resources being spent to contain it. Some suggested that maybe the humans should be left alone on their isolated planet. The Resistance developed new weapons using alien technology combined with human creativity. Improvised explosives built from Zephyrian power cells could destroy their heaviest armor. Modified communication devices allowed coordination between Resistance cells across continents. Most dangerous of all, humans learned to use alien psychology against them by creating fear and uncertainty where none had existed before. In occupied cities, the aliens found themselves surrounded by enemies they could not identify. A shop owner selling food might be gathering intelligence. A group of children playing in the street might be carrying messages between Resistance cells. Even alien sympathizers were suspect because humans had proven they would sacrifice their own people to achieve strategic objectives. The Zephyrians faced an impossible situation. They could not withdraw without admitting defeat to the entire galaxy, but continuing the occupation was draining resources from across their empire. Worse, human resistance tactics were spreading to other worlds through captured communications. Species that had been peaceful for centuries were learning dangerous new ways of thinking about warfare. Commander Velnox recommended complete extermination of the human species as the only solution to the crisis. But Admiral Kextar knew that genocide would destroy the hegemony's moral authority and might provoke rebellion among their own member species. The aliens were trapped by their own success in creating a peaceful galactic civilization that could not stomach the methods needed to defeat humanity. As the war entered its 6th month, both sides prepared for escalation that would determine the fate of human civilization. 6 months into the war, the Zephyrian Hegemony Council convened an emergency session on their capital world of Nexus Prime. Admiral Kextar faced a tribunal of 12 different species, each more concerned than the last about the prolonged human resistance. Council member Thysanala of the Cetacean Collective spoke for many when she demanded an explanation for why primitive barbarians continued to defy the most advanced military force in galactic history. On Earth, General Kane operated from his 15th different command center, moving constantly to avoid alien detection networks. His communication system now connected resistance cells across 7 continents using quantum encryption technology, reverse-engineered from captured Zephyrian equipment. Dr. Morgan's team had made the breakthrough that allowed secure coordination between widely scattered human forces. The resistance had evolved into something unprecedented in the galaxy. Major Elena Vasquez commanded the Denver Liberation Zone, which had become a model for human urban warfare. Her fighters included former civilians who had learned to think like predators instead of trying to match alien technology with human equipment. Accountant Mike Thompson now led demolition teams, while college student Ashley Young coordinated intelligence networks that extended throughout the Rocky Mountain region. Underground factories produced weapons using alien materials and human ingenuity. Mechanic Carlos Rivera had developed a plasma rifle that could penetrate Zephyrian shields by modifying captured power cells. More importantly, humans were learning to manufacture equipment that the aliens could not detect or counter because it combined technologies from completely different evolutionary paths. Dr. Morgan made a crucial discovery while analyzing genetic samples from multiple alien species. The Zephyrians and all their hegemony allies had evolved from creatures that survived through cooperation, intelligence, and technological advancement. They were highly evolved prey species that had transcended their origins to become the dominant force in the galaxy through superior science and organization. Humans represented something entirely different. They were evolved predators who had become intelligent without losing their aggressive instincts. Every other species in the galaxy had achieved peace before reaching the stars, but humans had conquered space while still maintaining the warrior spirit that kept them alive on a world full of dangerous competitors. Captain Nina Foster's intelligence unit discovered additional files in abandoned Zephyrian research stations. The aliens had been monitoring human conflicts for over 70 years, studying everything from ancient warfare to modern military tactics. But their analysis was fatally flawed because they could not understand why humans continued fighting when victory became impossible. The hegemony military doctrine was based on the assumption that intelligent beings would surrender when faced with superior force. Every species they had ever encountered followed this logical pattern. Wars ended quickly when one side demonstrated overwhelming technological advantage. Only humans seemed willing to choose death over defeat, regardless of the odds against them. Commander Jake Sullivan coordinated global resistance operations from a network of hidden bases that moved constantly across the North American continent. His teams had identified the critical weakness in alien psychology that could be exploited to turn their own superiority against them. The Zephyrians had forgotten how to fight a true war because they had not faced serious opposition for over 8 centuries. Admiral Kextar reviewed reports from occupied territories with growing desperation. Human resistance was not decreasing despite months of harsh countermeasures. Public executions only strengthened enemy resolve while destroying cultural landmarks, caused recruitment for resistance groups to increase dramatically. Every alien response seemed to make the situation worse instead of better. The hegemony forces tried increasingly severe tactics to break human spirit. They destroyed entire neighborhoods suspected of harboring resistance fighters. They executed civilians found with weapons or communication devices. They offered rewards for information about rebel activities. Nothing worked because humans were fighting for survival rather than political objectives. Underground networks expanded to include every level of society. Teachers like Catherine Baker organized children into intelligence-gathering units that could move through alien checkpoints without arousing suspicion. Doctors like Stephen Clark maintained medical facilities in hidden locations while treating wounded fighters. Corporate executives like Linda Green used business infrastructure to coordinate supply lines for the war effort. The resistance developed increasingly sophisticated tactics that exploited alien weaknesses. Improvised explosive devices built from Zephyrian technology could destroy their heaviest vehicles. Modified communication systems allowed coordination between resistance cells separated by thousands of miles. Most dangerous of all, humans learned to use psychological warfare against enemies who had never experienced genuine fear. Commander Velnox reported disturbing developments to his superiors on Nexus Prime. Human resistance tactics were spreading to other worlds through captured communication networks. Species that had been peaceful for centuries were learning about guerrilla warfare, improvised weapons, and the concept of fighting to the death rather than accepting defeat. The crystalline collective threatened to withdraw from the hegemony if the human war continued much longer. Their crystal-based consciousness could not comprehend the logic of self-sacrifice for abstract principles like freedom or dignity. Other member species were asking similar questions about whether the human threat justified the resources being spent to contain it. Dr. Morgan coordinated with surviving scientists across 6 continents to analyze every piece of alien technology they could recover. The breakthrough came when they realized that Zephyrian systems were designed for cooperation rather than conflict. Their equipment worked perfectly when used by rational beings following logical protocols, but became vulnerable when facing enemies who ignored conventional rules. Captain Foster discovered evidence that the hegemony leadership was divided about how to proceed with the human situation. Some council members wanted to end the occupation and quarantine Earth instead of continuing the costly war. Others argued that human resistance must be crushed completely before their ideas infected other species with dangerous thoughts about individual freedom. The aliens faced an impossible choice between admitting defeat and escalating to complete genocide. Neither option was acceptable to a civilization that had built its authority on peaceful expansion and moral superiority. The hegemony had created a galactic order based on the assumption that intelligent beings would choose cooperation over conflict when presented with logical alternatives. Admiral Kextar received his final orders from the Hegemony Council after months of debate. The war would continue, but with new restrictions designed to preserve the moral standing of the Alliance. No more orbital bombardments of civilian targets. No more mass executions. The humans must be defeated through superior tactics rather than overwhelming force. The decision would prove to be exactly what the resistance needed to achieve final victory. 1 year into the occupation, the Zephyrian Hegemony Council faced a crisis that threatened to destroy their 800-year peace. Admiral Kextar presented his final report to representatives of 12 different species, each more concerned than the last about the ongoing human problem. Casualties among hegemony forces now exceeded 300,000, while human resistance had grown stronger instead of weaker. On Earth, the resistance had become something unprecedented in galactic history. General Kane coordinated with Dr. Morgan to oversee an entire species functioning as a single military organism. Underground networks connected every continent, while hidden factories produced weapons that combined alien technology with human creativity. The war had transformed ordinary people into something the galaxy had never seen before. Commander Jake Sullivan emerged from his deep cover operation with news that changed everything. His team had spent months infiltrating Zephyrian supply lines and communication networks while pretending to be scattered survivors. Now they were ready to execute the most ambitious operation in human history. They would capture a Zephyrian dreadnought intact and use it to force the aliens from Earth. The final offensive required coordination between resistance cells across 3 continents. Major Amy Rodriguez would lead diversionary attacks in Los Angeles, while Captain Nina Foster struck supply depots throughout Europe. Meanwhile, Sullivan's commando unit would infiltrate the flagship Dominion using a captured alien transport and seized enemy uniforms. Dr. Morgan made the final preparations. In her hidden laboratory beneath the ruins of Denver, she had learned to reprogram Zephyrian systems using techniques that exploited their reliance on cooperative protocols. The aliens designed their technology for species that worked together logically, rather than warriors who specialized in deception and misdirection. The battle began at dawn local time across multiple time zones. Rodriguez led 2,000 fighters in a coordinated assault on alien strongholds throughout California, while Foster's team simultaneously attacked strategic targets from London to Berlin. The diversionary attacks were designed to draw attention away from Sullivan's primary objective. Admiral Kextar watched his tactical displays light up with reports of human activity across the globe. The scale and coordination exceeded anything he had seen during the entire occupation. These primitive barbarians were launching simultaneous operations that would challenge even hegemony military capabilities. He realized too late that humans had been preparing this moment for months. Sullivan's transport approached the Dominion using stolen access codes that Dr. Morgan had extracted from captured alien computers. His team of 30 commandos included naval engineer Tony Walker and communications specialist Beth Adams, both trained in Zephyrian technology. They wore enemy uniforms and carried forged identification that would allow them to reach the ship's command center. The infiltration succeeded because the aliens could not imagine anyone attempting such an impossible mission. Hegemony security. Protocols assumed rational beings who would surrender, rather than sacrifice themselves for symbolic victories. They never considered that humans might attempt to capture their most powerful warship through what amounted to an elaborate suicide attack. Once aboard the Dominion, Sullivan's team moved through the vessel like hunting predators. They avoided main corridors and used maintenance passages that their studies of captured alien ships had revealed. The Zephyrians built their vessels for efficiency rather than security, because they had never faced enemies who specialized in infiltration tactics. Engineering specialist Walker led a team to the ship's power core while Adams worked to gain control of communication systems. The aliens had superior technology, but their reliance on automated systems became a weakness when facing enemies who understood how to turn their own equipment against them. Human unpredictability proved more valuable than Zephyrian logic. The first alarm sounded when Sullivan's team reached the command level, but it was already too late. Adams had gained access to the ship's internal network and was feeding false information to alien security forces. Half the Zephyrian crew was chasing phantom intruders, while the other half received contradictory orders from compromised communication systems. Dr. Morgan's voice echoed through the Dominion's corridors as she broadcast a message in perfect Zephyrian from her laboratory on Earth. She spoke directly to Admiral Kekstar and his crew, explaining exactly why their invasion had failed. They had judged humanity by their capacity for violence, without understanding that humans fought hardest when defending their home and freedom. The battle for the ship's bridge became close-quarters combat that negated every Zephyrian advantage. In narrow corridors, their advanced weapons meant nothing, while human determination and willingness to sacrifice everything made the difference. Sullivan's commandos fought like cornered predators, using everything from combat knives to improvised explosives. Admiral Kekstar faced the ultimate choice as human fighters closed on his command center. He could destroy his own flagship to prevent its capture or watch helplessly, as primitive barbarians seized the most advanced warship in the hegemony fleet. Either decision would end his career and possibly destabilize the entire Galactic Alliance. Commander, Sullivan reached the bridge with only 6 surviving members of his original team. Walker had died securing the engine room while Adams gave her life to maintain control of communication systems. But their sacrifice had achieved the impossible. Humans now controlled a Zephyrian dreadnought and all its advanced technology. In the final confrontation, Sullivan offered Kekstar a simple choice. The hegemony fleet would withdraw from Earth immediately or face systematic destruction using their own captured technology. Humans had proven they could learn alien systems faster than the aliens could adapt to human tactics. The war was over, but not in the way anyone had expected. The Zephyrian withdrawal began within hours as Admiral Kekstar transmitted surrender orders to all occupation forces. The Hegemony Council voted to classify Earth as a forbidden zone and issued galaxy-wide warnings about human aggression. They had learned that some species were too dangerous to conquer, regardless of technological superiority. Dr. Morgan's final report to the reformed United Earth Council concluded with observations that would reshape humanity's future. The aliens had made the classic mistake of confusing civilization with weakness. Humans proved that a species could build cities, create art, and explore the stars while maintaining the warrior spirit that ensured survival against any threat. The war ended not with surrender but with recognition that Earth belonged to humanity and would remain free regardless of what forces might challenge that independence. Children learned to pilot captured alien ships while their parents prepared for whatever threats the galaxy might send against them next. In the aftermath, as humans reverse-engineered Zephyrian technology and prepared to take their place among the stars, one message echoed across known space. Any species foolish enough to declare war on humanity had better pray they survived the experience, because humans never forgot their enemies and never forgave attacks on their home.